Welcome to the Be Real podcast with your host, Joe Cebula and Bobby Maximus. Bobby, before we get started, Happy New Year. I know you've got a lot of exciting stuff planned this year. Let's get down to business. What's the plan? What are we talking about today?
All right. I'm sick of resolutions. We don't have resolutions. Resolutions are temporary things. We've got goals.
Well, and I feel like resolutions are also like admitting that you just completely didn't follow through on your promises to yourself too. It's like just admitting defeat in a certain way.
Well, to a degree, and you had said something the other day that most people fail in their fitness goals. And a lot of that, and this is a preamble to this talk, a lot of it is we set up fitness in our minds as a temporary thing. It's a boot camp, it's 30 days, it's 75 days, it's 90 days, and it's a temporary intervention or injunction, if you will, into our lives. You do it to start the new year. You do it when you have a high school reunion. You do it because you want to look good for a wedding. You do it because you want to look good for the summer. And then you give up completely. And that's why people fail. It's a mindset thing. And so that's why I want to start off by saying, I don't want you to get in the habit of coming up with this New Year's resolution that you're going to follow through on for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and then you're going to quit. If you really want to get fit in 2025, you want to make this your year, you're going to have to put fitness into what I call the lifestyle category. It's no different than brushing your teeth or having your shower. And I've said this before, Joe, and I'll say it again. If you have the flu, you still brush your teeth. If you're sick, you still brush your teeth. If you're tired, you still brush your teeth. If it's Sunday and it's the football playoffs in the NFL, you still brush your teeth. Like, that's how you should look at activity.
Yeah. I've always used the example of like car maintenance, Like you do your oil changes, you do your tire rotations, you do the radiator fluids and all that stuff when they come up, like when they're due. And if you skip them, you know what's going to happen. Well, and I've always said, like, fitness is kind of the same thing. Like, you've got a maintenance program you got to maintain. And if you want to be in a high performance area, you have to put your body through the paces.
Well, and that's the perfect analogy, because what we're going to talk about today is really the topic of today's podcast is 5 things that you need to do in 2025 if you actually want to get fit this year. If you really want to transform your body, whether that's building muscle, losing body fat, looking better, feeling better. These are 5 things that you absolutely have to do. But I say have to do, and I'm glad you brought up the car analogy, Joe, because no one really enjoys getting their oil changed. Like, what do you get from that? Like, you sit in the car dealership or you sit in the Jiffy Lube or wherever you get your oil changed, and you sit there for 2 hours, you do it yourself in your garage. Like, nobody actually enjoys doing that type of thing. No one enjoys getting new tires on their car. Like, that's not an enjoyable purchase that you can, it's one of those things that money's just out the window. And fitness is the same, because the reason people aren't fit is they're avoiding the work that really matters. And honestly, some of that work is unenjoyable, but you're going to have to do it to get fit. So in the spirit of that, Joe, let's go down these 5 things. Let's cover off this list.
Let's do it.
Number 1, you're going to have to start lifting weights. Yes. I know you don't want to. I know you think you're going to get too bulky. I know it might hurt a little bit. I know it might cause a little bit of discomfort. I know it's not easy all the time to get to the gym, but you're actually going to have to lift some weights.
I'm glad this is number 1. And I just saw a video with the guy who plays Commissioner Gordon in the new Batman series, right? What's his name? JK. I think what it is off the top of my head. But there was a video or a picture of him going around the internet. He's just like shredded. He's just in the gym. And it's like, here's a 60-some-year-old dude and he's just shredded. And he was saying it's almost unfair because the role that he had previous to that, he had to be basically emaciated. The character he was playing was very unhealthy. And he said to do that, it was just hours of cardio and a starvation diet. And so he was down to nothing. And so as soon as he started eating and lifting weights, he just put on muscle like fast. And so any amount of muscle that you could put on, you could see because there was no fat between his skeleton and the surface of his skin. And I was thinking about that exactly in these terms. You can do hours and hours of cardio every day and you can put yourself on that starvation diet, you will lose weight. But when you get down to that weight, you're going to look unhealthy. You're not going to look good. Like, you have to have that weightlifting element in there, or else you're just going to look sick.
Well, and that's one of the reasons people look so bad on Ozempic. Like, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but Ozempic also eats your muscle. So yes, you're going to lose weight if you use that drug, but you're also going to lose muscle as well. And then you end up with what people call the Ozempic face. You end up with it's honestly, I don't want to make fun of people, but it's a really funny looking or odd looking physique that you end up with.
J.K. Simmons, that's what I'm talking about.
Oh, I can see him. He's jacked. But,
just jacked.
But that's a body that wasn't built by Ozempic, Joe. That's a body that's actually put on muscle. And the reason I wanted to bring up Ozempic is because that's the easy way out. I just have to take this drug and I don't have to lift weights at all. Because lifting weights can be difficult. I do want to add a little asterisk to this, though. I don't necessarily expect you to grab a dumbbell, and I don't necessarily expect you to grab a barbell. When I say weights, I'm talking about resistance training as a whole. You can do body weight stuff, push-ups, pull-ups, and dips. That's a great workout. You can use bands. You can use some type of cable machine at the gym. But I need you to do something that's actually going to build some muscle. And it's going to take some time. It's going to hurt a little bit. And it's going to be difficult. Another number I want to throw at you, Joe. When we look at a measure of fitness today, for most people, it has to do with aesthetics. Like, it's looks. Most people aren't competing in the World Championship for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Most people aren't playing in the NFL. Most people aren't playing in the NBA. For a lot of people, the real test of fitness is how they look. And that comes down to how lean you are. For every pound of muscle you have extra, you're going to burn an extra 50 to 100 calories a day just sitting around. One of the easiest ways to get lean is to have more muscle. Like, you talk about having a bigger metabolism. If I have 10 more pounds of muscle than you, I can eat between 500 and 1,000 extra calories a day. That makes the whole process easier.
Yeah. Well, and I would say harder if your goal is to keep gaining muscle, right? There seems to be a top end because your metabolism just can't take in enough calories to support the weight that you're putting on.
Well, if you're like me and you're 230 pounds and really, really lean, you've got a lot of leeway in terms of the food that you can consume, which again makes it a lot easier. So guys, girls, get lifting weights. And I get that it's going to take time. And the reason people don't want to do this is because it takes a good hour, 40 minutes at I'm going to say a minimum, or 30 minutes at a minimum to get a good weightlifting workout, plus the time to get to the gym, to get home, to all that stuff. Like, it can be inconvenient, but you're going to have to do it. Yeah. So that's number one. Number two, and despite what you just said about that actor, and by the way, he played Santa in Red One, didn't he?
Yeah,
he was just all like yoked out of his tree. But despite what you just said about him and the hours and hours of cardio, I hate to tell you, man, you got to do some cardio. You got to.
You need to. Yeah. Now, I mean, you need to do some. But again, it's like, what's the goal? If you're an actor and you're trying to look emaciated, like, you got to pour it on. But if you're just trying, like, there's gray area in between the extremes, right?
Oh, for sure. Like, you're not gonna like, when we're talking endless cardio, we don't have to have you do hours a day, but you're going to have to do cardio in some way every single day. Now, do I expect you to sprint every day? No. Do I expect you to spend 3 hours at the gym on a step mill sweating like crazy every day? No. But you're going to have to walk. You're going to have to bike. You're going to have to jog. You're going to have to move your body in some way. You've heard people talk about this 10,000 steps thing. 10,000 steps isn't magic. It's just a number that's indicative that you actually moved a lot that day. And what it does, it creates a calorie burn. And that's Joe, really, like, that's all this is. Like, you're going through this right now, trying to lean up. You've got to create a calorie deficit somehow. And the more you walk, the more calories you burn, the easier it is to create that deficit, because it's really hard. And you can speak to this. It's really hard to do it through food alone.
Yeah, it really is. And the margins for error are very, very small. and you've got to be very precise when you're weighing and measuring, and you got to weigh and measure everything. But if you're burning an extra 500 calories a day, you've got a little bit more leeway. You can rest just that little bit, and it can make a huge difference. And I would say too, like, but besides just the weight loss benefits of cardio, like, it's just good to do cardio. Like, if you want to be healthy, like, that's why you do cardio. You do cardio for heart and lung health, right? You do cardio for some endurance so that you can actually give a sustained effort when you're playing pickleball or chasing the kids or doing whatever else it is you do for fun. The weight training thing it's sort of the secret hack to staying lean, is to maintain a decent amount of muscle mass. I also think it's the secret hack for looking good. Muscled people are just more attractive in general. And you don't have to be, like giant muscle man in order to make that happen, but just look lean, look athletic, look like you can move and that you take care of yourself. Healthy is sexy, right? And so you need both. You really need both. And it creates sort of a nice feedback loop. The more you do of each, sort of the more they support each other.
So here's what I was looking up while you were talking. Calories in a McDouble. And I know this is going to be a ridiculous example because you probably shouldn't eat at McDonald's anyway. But according to AI, according to the McDonald's website, according to a couple of other sources, a McDouble at McDonald's has 400 calories. Now, that may vary slightly depending on location and preparation. So 420, 380, whatever you want to call it. Now, to be clear, I'm not calling it healthy, but you've got about 400 calories. If you're eating celery, if you're eating blueberries, if you're drinking air because that's the only calories that you're allowed, if you're on a starvation diet, you're going to crack because it's hard to suffer day after day after day after day for the year. And I've been on those type of diets, Joe. When I've been trying to fight at 205 in the UFC, I am weighing, measuring everything. I am not enjoying life. When you feel that way, do you know how enjoyable a couple of chicken nuggets or a McDouble is? It's like the best thing you've ever had in your life. And just the ability to have a little treat can make this process easier and sustainable. So my question to you is, would you rather never have a junk food again, never have a Culver's burger again, never have a treat again, and just try to white knuckle the process, or just go for a 30 or 40 minute walk, burn 400 calories, and then go treat yourself to that burger that you want? That to me mentally is so much easier. And if all you did was walk an hour a day for your cardio and you burned an extra 500 calories, by the end of the year, you've got a lot of calories in the bank to go get a treat here or there. Like
I will tell you too, when you're under eating, right? When you're in a deficit, like, keep your weight training as intense as you can keep it. It doesn't even need to be that intense.
Nope.
You could keep your cardio as hard as you want it to be if you're training for, like, performance. But for weight loss, it doesn't even need to be that hard. In fact, when you go hard, you end up paying a greater cost for it because you just can't bounce back because you're in a deficit. So it's almost better to go like a little bit easier, a little less intense on the weight training, way low impact on the cardio, and be able to maintain it than it is to try to dig that extra little bit out of it.
No, for sure. And one more thing, and this is actually going to be one of our longer podcasts because there's a lot to go over here, which is fine. It's the start of 2025, and if you don't have 20 minutes to listen to something, you don't care anyway. But you'll always hear these people talk. Oh, well, my cardio is I just lift weights faster. Like, haha, funny, good. You want to get out of doing cardio. But actually doing weight training doesn't burn a lot of calories, especially the way most people weight train. Like, most people aren't doing CrossFit. Most people aren't doing circuit training. They're doing 3 sets of 10, 3 sets of 12, 3 sets of 15. Even a really hard workout in the gym might only burn 400 or 500 calories. Like, it's not a lot. So you got to do your cardio. Now, number 3, you're going to have to start counting calories. You probably have no idea what you consume. Like, I had to look up what a McDouble was. Okay, it's 400 calories. It actually surprises me it's that low. But at the same token, Joe, there are a lot of health foods in quotation marks. It surprises me how high the calories are. Like if you're eating a jar of almond butter a night, you're consuming thousands of extra calories. And I get that you think almond butter is better than peanut butter, and someone told you it was healthy, but you're having macadamia nuts, you're having cashew nuts, you're having olive oil.
We were just talking about those what are they, like the Larry's protein cookies?
Yep.
They got like, I don't know, 20 grams of protein in them. And so you're like, oh, that's a much better choice. That cookie is still like 420 calories.
Yeah, like you're consuming.
It's a McDouble.
You're consuming a lot, and you can't do it by feel. You've got to weigh and you've got to measure. An extra tablespoon of olive oil is nothing on your salad. Like it doesn't even cover the salad. Like it's nothing, but it's 120 extra calories. And if you do that at breakfast, you do that at lunch, you do that at dinner, now all of a sudden, this is why at the end of the year, why you're overweight. So I know it's not fun to pick up your phone every time you eat and punch something into MyFitnessPal or a calorie counting app or whatever it is. But you're going to have to start to do some research, and you're going to have to start counting calories if you want to lose some weight. And again, this isn't necessarily a weight loss podcast, Joe, but what's the number one thing that's going to get you looking good? It's being leaner. That's like what everybody wants. When you see a Hollywood actor, and you can speak to this because you've worked on tons of movies, being lean on camera makes you look big. It makes you look strong. It makes you look, there's no substitute for it. If I was preparing somebody for a movie role and they had to look like quote unquote a muscle man, I need to get you lean so you can pull off the part.
Yeah, 100% it is. Everybody looks bigger on film just by being leaner.
Yep.
And big dudes don't always look as big as they think they are, or as big as they even appear in real life.
And there was no one, like when I think of good physiques in movie, like things people talk about, right? Like people talk about Brad Pitt in Fight Club.
Right, yeah.
He wasn't a big guy. He was just shredded.
Just
if you look at the actors in 300, not one of those guys was, I mean, they looked jacked out of their mind, but they weren't walking around like bodybuilders. They weren't muscles on muscles on muscles.
Yeah, those dudes in a T-shirt just look like dudes in a T-shirt, you know? Yep.
Henry Cavill. Henry's not a massive person now. He's got a great physique. He's got a great musculature. He looks incredible, but he's 6'2", 6'3", and 200 pounds. He's not 250 like The Rock. He's not 260 like The Rock, but he looks incredible because he's lean. Tom Hardy isn't a ginormous person, but he looks great because he's lean. So you're going to have to, you want to get lean, you're going to have to cut your calories. Yep. Number 4, not cut your calories, count your calories, but you're also probably going to have to cut them as well. That was kind of a little slip. Number 4,
keep a food scale right on the counter. That's my tip for you on number 3. Moving on.
Weigh and measure. Number 4, you're really going to hate this. You're probably going to tune right out of the podcast. No more booze. You're done.
What did I just say to you before we even started? It's not like we're drinking to get our vitamins from the booze, right? I don't get my vitamin V from vodka. Like, there's nothing in there that's adding to the diet in some way that you can't afford to cut it out.
There's one reason to drink, and that's some level of emotional or social enjoyment. That is really it, or like using it as a coping mechanism. But it does nothing for you nutritionally. It's going to mess with your hormones. It's going to make you fat. Like, that's the bottom line. And if you were to look at two physiques, if I was to have you close your eyes right now, Joe, and picture two people, one person works out all the time, they don't drink and they eat healthy. And the other person drinks a gallon of vodka a day. I want you to like paint a picture of like what this person looks like. I always say this, I'll put this a better way. If you day drink, you're going to look like somebody that day drinks. And what do you think the guy who goes to the ballpark at 1:30 in the afternoon to watch the New York Yankees that has a hot dog and like a giant frosty mug of beer, what do you think that person looks like? You know exactly what that person looks like, Joe.
Well, hey, I was just down in Cancun on a family vacation at a nice resort that had a swim-up bar. And that's, of course, where everybody wants to spend all their time. But you know who sits at a swim-up bar?
Yep.
People who look like they sit.
Well, there's a reason it's called a beer belly.
Yeah.
Like it's not called a blueberry belly. It's not called a strawberry belly. It's not called a steak belly. It's not called a chicken breast belly. It's a beer belly. So like you're
broccoli
no
belly,
right? No more booze. And the final one, Joe, and this goes back. I actually should have said this before booze because it makes more sense. But when we're talking about counting your calories or cutting your calories, you have to limit eating out. You're going to have to make your food at home. Number one, most restaurants are not interested in your health. They're interested in making $1 and they're interested in convenience. Number two, most times when you eat out, you're not going to a fancy sit-down restaurant where the ingredients are made from scratch and you know, you're eating fast food. You're going to need to prepare your food at home. The other thing is even if you go to the fancy restaurant that uses the good ingredients, you don't know how it was prepared. You don't know how many calories. Like we went to a bunch of nice restaurants over Christmas in my household because that's what we love to do. We love to eat out. But a lot of fancy fine dining restaurants don't put calories on their menu, Joe. Like that's something that you get. So you're either eating fast food and you know how many calories you're getting, or you're going for a nice dinner and you have no clue. Yeah. But you've got to limit eating out, and that might not be enjoyable. It might take some prep work at home, but you got to stop eating out.
Yeah, because your choices eating out are super, super limited. Because again, the restaurant isn't interested in your weight loss goals. They're interested in, you know, giving you a meal and an experience that's so good that you're going to talk about it, that you're going to send other people their way. They're trying to make a buck.
And that's not that's not a fat-free meal.
No. And you and I live in America, and we know that any restaurant owned by a corporation will cut every corner to help ensure that the shareholders get an extra nickel on their investment. And so, you know, if they can get a cheaper cut of meat, they're going to do it. If they can get a cheaper vegetable, they're going to do it. They're going to take every shortcut they can get on you. If you're, you know, when I spent time in Europe, a lot of the places I went, food was really, really well prepared, fresh that day. But how many calories was in it? I don't know. Did they use real butter? I don't know. So you're limited. You're limited to like a pile of meat and some vegetables at any place that you go. And that's just not the thing on the menu, you know?
And so here's where this gets enjoyable. And I'll wrap this up by saying this, Joe, because here's what I've asked you to do. You wanted to get fit in 2025. Here's what I've said to you. You're going to have to work out. You're going to have to lift weights 3 to 4 times a week, 5 times a week. You're going to have to spend 40 minutes to an hour doing it. So really now I'm costing you 5 hours a week. That's not fun for a lot of people. Now, if you love working out like I do, great, but it's not fun for a lot of people. All of a sudden, you got to squeeze an extra 5 hours out of your work week. Like that's not fun. Number 2, you're going to have to start walking. You're going to have to start moving. You can't watch TV as much. You can't sit and play video games. Like you're going to have to do some cardio. Okay, great. More work. Now we're not up to 3 or 4 hours a week. Now we're doing stuff for 8 or 9 hours a week. You're going to have to count your calories. It's going to take effort. You're going to be miserable doing it. You're not allowed to have booze, and you probably love booze. Like there's a reason people drink. It's because they really enjoy it. And now you're not allowed to, like, I sound like the fun police. Like I'm sucking all the fun out of your life. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like that. You can find workouts that are fun. You can find a way to make a walk fun. Counting calories, it's hard at the start. It's going to get easier once you know what's in your food. But this is the reason why people fail, Joe, because when I stack these things on top of you, it's not easy to do all these things, especially when they're not habit.
Yeah, well, I will say, too, from experience training people, like, what's your goal? I want to have 6-pack abs. Like, what are you willing to do to get it? And up front, I will do anything. Anything you ask, I will do. And then 2 weeks in, it's not worth that price anymore.
But there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I'll end the podcast with this, Joe. This does get easier.
Yeah, it does.
Working out is harder when you're unfit. The more fit you are, the easier it gets. Walking gets easier. Counting calories gets easier because now I know what a McDouble has. It has 400 calories. I don't have to look that up anymore. Okay, I can remember that. Maybe I have to look it up in 3 weeks or whatever, but eventually you know exactly what you're eating. If you detox from booze, less you drink, the easier it gets to not drink. If you're drinking every day, it's hard to shut that off. So this will get easier, but these are the 5 things that you need to do. And this is why a gross majority of the world is unfit, because they're not doing these things. So the opposite of this is do an experiment. Joe, I want you, because you are active, I want you to not work out, no more walking or no more cardio, no more counting your calories. You have to have a couple of alcoholic beverages a day, and I want you to eat out for every meal. What do you think's going to happen to you in a couple of months?
I don't think I'll make it through the end of the year, Bobby.
You know what I mean, though? Like, that's just, so it's like, it's just what we have to do. So there you have it. Another episode of the Be Real podcast. We were way too real with you. You're probably angry. You're probably salty, but you said you wanted this. I mean, you clicked on this video. You were searching up ways to get fit in 2025.
Hey, if you're angry, hit us in the comments. That's what they're there for, right? Angry comments.
Yeah, I'm happy with it. So stay tuned for the next episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, do all the things you need to do to support us. And don't be a hoe. Share the show.